So Katie with the Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary, thanks so much for being here today. Tell us a little bit about what you guys do and kind of the mission behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you, Tom, for having us on. We're really excited about this opportunity. So, Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization that resides in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. It's a little teeny tiny community called Candy Kitchen. We were founded in 1991 and we've been here ever since. And basically, how we got started was Jackie Evans, our founder, had a really good relationship with the tribal nations around us, and they knew her as an animal lover. And then she started getting wolves and wolf dogs sent to her to take care of. And at some point, she had so many of them, she was like, well, I need to do this for real. And so that's kind of how we got started. And what we are a permanent placement sanctuary for wolves, wolf dogs, and other wild canids in need. So, presently we have Australian dingoes, New Guinea singing dogs, coyotes, red foxes, and wolves and wolf dogs. And once they get into our sanctuary, they never leave. We are their forever home, for the rest of their lives. We provide care to them every day, rain, sleets, snow, sunshine, just kind of like your mailman. And so all of our animals, get fed, have their medication, supplements, all of that. They also receive veterinary care every year. Our mission is threefold. It's rescue, sanctuary, and education. So first and foremost, we take in animals that need rescue. So that means we don't do things like buy animals, we don't buy puppies. We only take in animals that need a safe place to call home. And then sanctuary, of course, is what we do on our day to day, which is providing that daily care to the animals we have here, and education. What we do on social media during outreach events and all of that is educating people on these animals, all of the different species we have, common problems, myths, and kind of all of that good stuff. And we currently have 79 animals in our care, which is quite a few.
That sounds like a lot, and it to me when I hear the singing, what was it? A singing what?
A New Guinea singing dog.
A New Guinea singing dog. I've never heard of that before. And then a wolf dogs. Like it just sounds like with 79 animals there that it would be very loud. Is it loud? Are they always constantly like howling and
Not constantly. So the wolves will howl usually when they want to tattletale on something, like if they see us getting ready to feed, or if two other animals get in a scuffle, or really anything semi-exciting. They love to yell and say, "Hey, everyone, there's something going on. We all need to know about it." And that happens throughout the day. But our New Guinea singing dogs actually just scream the entire day. They are very loud.
okay.
And they're a really cool species because they were once thought to be extinct in the wild.
Oh.
However, scientists have recently discovered a few of them in the wild. But for the most part, these guys are privately owned, and that's what's keeping the species alive. But there are, the beginnings of recovery efforts going on between some conservation societies. But I personally think they should be called the New Guinea screaming dogs because they scream.
And I hope that during editing we'll actually throw a New Guinea singing dog in here so that people can actually hear and see what it sounds like. And so, being in New Mexico, how cold does it get in the winter? I think of New Mexico as being kind of a warm climate, kind of like Arizona. Is it similar climate to that, or do you guys have a winter where they have to kind of come indoors?
Um, yeah, you would think that we would have similar climate to Arizona, but where we're located is actually in the high desert. So we're about 7,500 feet above sea level. So we get pretty cold here in the winter. This morning when I got out of bed, it was 19 degrees. We are at 50 right
Wow.
now, so that's really good. But the desert is very, very cold in the while the sun is down, and then it does warm up once the sun is up. But we regularly get below freezing. Last week we had 7 inches of snow in 2 days, and we've still got a little bit of that around just because it had piled up so high. And the only animals that come in when it's that cold are our singers because they're teeny tiny little canids, and they're obviously from New Guinea, which is not at all the same climate. But everyone else stays outside all day, every day. They've got, igloos, dog houses, cave houses, stocked with straw and stuff. So they stay nice and warm. And, for the most part, they're equipped for that kind of weather.
Nice. And so you rescue animals. So what are some of like your rescue stories that, and most recent stories of kind of rescuing some wolf dogs, different animals that you kind of brought in?
Yeah, so this year has actually been really exciting for us because we were able to have our most successful year in rescue ever. We brought in total 25 different animals to our sanctuary, which is just absurd. There are other sanctuaries that have like 11 or 12 animals.
Mm,
So the fact that we were able to save so many was really awesome. We started the year by taking in 7 animals from Kansas, whose owner passed away, and his family was not equipped to take care of them once he was gone. And so it was either, take these animals in or they were going to be euthanized.
mm,
Um, and then so our Pennsylvania kids, we offered to drive all the way from New Mexico to Pennsylvania to help get them out of their enclosures and into a transport van. We offered to cover their veterinary care and any expenses. We were also going to provide the drugs to sedate them and reverse them. And then we offered to transport them anywhere in the country. But with the Pennsylvania Six, even though they were located in a state that is entirely illegal for wolf dogs, meaning they could have been seized and euthanized at any point in time,
mm.
their owner was, his health was failing. And again, if those animals weren't taken, they were going to be euthanized. They were all really young, under 3 years old, and they, for the most part, were high content wolf dogs, which a lot of organizations want to take in because the higher contents look more like wolves, act more like wolves, and those are the things that, for the most part, people want to see. Low content can look like a husky, so there's just that inherent bias towards them. Um, but other organizations and rescues and all of that declined taking them in, predominantly because these animals were very inbred, and that resulted in ugly animals compared to what they're supposed to look like. They have a myriad of health issues. Like one of our kids, she's 2 years old and is already 90% blind. And then they also, for the most part, were not social when they were taken in. So, with all of those things, no one else wanted them because they couldn't capitalize on them or, forge those relationships as easily or cover the medical care. So we said, you know what? We'll do what it takes. We'll drive all the way there. We'll handle all the things. We'll bring them home. And we brought them home and they're doing really wonderful now. Several of them have made friends with caretakers, which is super awesome. And a really wonderful thing to see and watch happen. And then our last big rescue of the year was in Minnesota. There was a licensed individual who had over 80 animals in total, from 17 wolves and wolf dogs to a couple of raccoons and a really odd assortment of animals total. And this individual reached a point in his life where he was going through some really difficult things. And it was again, do or die situation with these animals. So we had two single males that could take in female companions, and then four of the animals that we took in were puppies, around 6-ish months old. And puppies are a really great thing to bring into this environment because while we prefer to pair our animals in male and female pairs. Wolf dogs, especially higher contents, will grace puppies with a thing called puppy privilege, and that puppies can do no wrong. It's an inherent thing that helps, biologically them to survive in the wild. So we introduced the puppies into three different enclosures. One was a single male, and he got a male and female brother and sister, and they are the cutest family. Another pair got or two other pairs got one single puppy, and all of them have acclimated amazing. And then our females, one of them did not work out with her companion, so she's currently single, and the other one was just introduced to her forever companion a couple of weeks ago, and they're doing really wonderful. So those are kind of our big rescues of the year, just because like these big rescue missions are really tough to pull out. So I mean, not to pat ourselves on the back too much, but it was really amazing and impressive work that we were able to come together, build enclosures, and do all the things to make sure these animals were all saved from euthanasia situations. And circling back to the Minnesota kids, even though we only took in 6 of the 17 wolf dogs, every single animal on that property was saved. So none of them got euthanized, which is really amazing. And it was a great show of collaboration with other sanctuaries and facilities throughout the country.
Yeah, that's amazing how everybody can come together. And what does it take in that situation where you have so many different, I guess, sanctuaries that would be involved for different types of animals to have somebody that can coordinate, I guess reaching out to the correct ones? Was it, how do people even just kind of find you when they come into that situation where the owner's, dying, and they need something, I'm sure the family members are like, what do we do? How does that normally work? Like, can you walk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, pause 1 second.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, good. So the wolf and wolf dog community is actually really small. And there's this thing called the list serve, which is basically a giant intake form whenever there's a wolf or wolf dog in need. This email will go out to, pretty much every sanctuary facility, people who rescue, even if they don't take in animals and help rehome them. So that's where we'll get a lot. There's also a bunch of, Facebook groups and forums for exotics, for rescues, for wolves and wolf dogs. So that's a good place to network. And then a lot of it is just networking with people in the industry. Like our executive director has connections with even, places that do big cats or other things that aren't even related to what we do specifically. But that way, when there is a situation like what happened in Minnesota, we have those contacts to help reach out to people. But in addition to the listserv, we have an intake request form, and on average, we can get anywhere from around 250 to 400 intake requests a year from owners or people looking to rehome their animals. And what's really interesting about that is the phenomena of misrepresentation, which is basically attributing a label to an animal that is not accurate, and that's either knowingly or unknowingly. Um, so of all of the animals that we get intake request forms, fewer than 10% of those animals are actually high content wolf dogs, which is just insane because, majority of people think they have an upper mid or a high, but for the most part, they are misrepresented domestic dogs, huskies, maybe teeny tiny low contents that phenotype as domestic dogs. But there really are not as many wolves or higher contents that need placement that you'd think. It's a smaller pool of animals in need than it sounds like, but it's still really challenging because there are only a few qualified places in the country to accommodate that sort of stuff.
Mm. And when you're going through those intake forms, like how do you, how do you separate them? Like, do you have like an interview process? Do you like, obviously you can't interview the dog, but let's just say you do like the interview of the animal, I should say, not dog, but of the animal. Like how can you tell pretty quickly, like through a photo or a video share, the type of breed of the animal to kind of see if it's a fit or not, or how does that like I guess weeding out process go?
Yeah, so our intake request form is really thorough, and it basically is a way for us to get most of the information that we would need about an animal before we even talk to the owner, because that's a really good place for us to start. Like you mentioned, the photos and videos, those are super important because, as I mentioned with misrepresentation, oftentimes people will reach out to us saying they need help homing their wolf or finding a sanctuary for their wolf, their content wolf dog. But then we'll see a photo and it's a Husky Malamute German Shepherd mix. And so from there, that gives us a really good place to start. Like, say they're having same sex aggression issues, and that's in the intake request form. We can then provide the owner's resources with here's what we would recommend to try and keep that animal in their home instead of them having to seek sanctuary placement, because sanctuary space is so limited in the country, the continent. There are only a handful of people that do this kind of work. So we'll often try and provide as many resources as we can to help out owners with animals that don't need placement, because oftentimes we find people think they have a wolf or a wolf dog. They treat the animal like a wolf, and then whenever they see challenges with the animals that are common in domestic dogs, like escaping. Huskies are known escape artists. Malamutes are known for same-sex aggression. And, all of these animals, especially backyard bred ones, can have these challenges. But when owners think that they have a wolf or a, wolf dog, they think that the animal can't be worked with. They think that they're dangerous. They think that absolutely no one else can handle them. And if they can't handle them, then they need a sanctuary. But more often than not, there are issues that can be resolved. And, whenever we get an intake request and we can tell right away that the animal isn't what the owner thinks it is, we'll provide gently some information about here's, what we see with this animal. And then again, those resources to help with whatever, issues they may be having. And if we get an intake request form for a wolf dog and we don't have space for it, we'll help network them. We'll send it on the list serve, reach out to people. And then as far as how we prioritize them, first and foremost, what do we have space for? Because there is a constant rotation of animals in need. So one of the things that we'll look at is how dire is the situation? Is this animal at risk of euthanasia? Do they have a deadline? That's important. Where are they located? Are they in an illegal state or are they somewhere safe? What sort of behaviors are they having? Is it just someone who no longer wants their animal, or is it an animal that is truly difficult to manage, maybe unpredictable, unhandleable, unsocial? Because we prefer to take in the animals that cannot do well in private homes. We take in a lot of the dangerous ones, a lot of the mean ones, and a lot of the super fractious or nervous ones. So if it's just like a happy-go-lucky animal, we don't want to take them in because they can do well somewhere else. And then also it'll depend on the animals that we have. So if we have a single female like we have right now, and she's very hands off, she gets very scared when humans are in her enclosure cleaning or walking by, we wouldn't put her in with another shy or scared animal because then they can feed off of one another's anxiety. Ideally, to pair with her, we would get a social or confident, because those things don't always mean the same thing, animal to pair with her so that one, they're not, cycling through the anxiety and feeding off of one another, but then also the unsocial one can start learning confidence, even if it's not socialness, but feeling that safety by having a more confident animal with them. And, we don't want to put a really old animal with a really young animal because the young one can probably like start beating up on the old one, or the old one's not going to have patience. So it's really finding what we think is going to be the perfect match based on their personalities and their needs.
Now you mentioned like high content wolf dog. So what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, so
Like being high content.
Yeah, so wolf dogs are categorized by the amount of gray wolf in their DNA.
Mhm.
And so the three basic terms are low content, mid content, and high content. And they are broken down by percentages. And a low content is anywhere from 1 to 49%. And that means that they're a majority of domestic dogs. So they'll have more dog phenotypes, which are physical attributes than they will wolfy ones. They'll likely act more like a dog. It's not to say they won't have any challenging behaviors or that they can't have any sort of wolfy behaviors, but for the most part, they are more dog-like. Mid contents are 50% to 84%, and those are going to be animals that have a solid chunk of wolf and domestic dog phenotypes, how they look, how they act. And then a high content, it is 85% all the way up to 99.9%. And those animals should, for the most part, be indistinguishable from a pure wolf. Depending on what lines they're from, how inbred they are, all of that stuff, you can definitely get animals that don't look like a wolf, but they look wolfy. Um, and all of that, it's not an exact science. We do have some lows that are completely feral, and that's likely because of not their wolf content, but their environment. But then we've also, on the other end of things, we have animals that are 95% plus, because that's the highest embark DNA testing will label an animal with no trace dog breeds. So genetically pretty freaking close to a pure wolf. One of them, like, she acts like a pure dog. We've got others that are super sweet and gentle. So content doesn't dictate behavior, but it can give you a really solid basis of what you're working with because, of course, the higher in content you go, the more challenging they can be. It's kind of like turning, if you've got a husky or a malamute, that's a pretty difficult dog to manage in general. If you have like a dial, that's probably an 8 or a 9 out of 10 on challenging breeds. But with wolves and wolf dogs, you're cranking that up all the way up to 15, even with your lows, because they come with challenges like, are they legal where I live? Can I find a vet who will provide veterinary care for these animals? Because a lot of them won't. Do I have someone to take care of the animal if I want to take a vacation? And all of that stuff. So that's kind of what the content levels are. And like I said, it's not a perfect science, and the ranges that I gave you are presently the most commonly accepted ones in the community, but it's something arbitrary that we've all decided as a community, but there have historically been other breakdowns of content in those ranges. So it's definitely not something set in stone, but it's a good basis for a foundation.
You've referred to kids a couple times. Do you classify these as kids, or is that one of those things where me just being naive, where maybe groups of wolf dogs or wolves are called kids, or is it just you treat them like family, so you call them your kids?
It's definitely they are not kids, like they're dogs. But all of us here, I mean, we live out in the middle of nowhere. We are 60 miles from the nearest grocery store, so we're
Oh
extremely
wow.
remote and, away from everything. So we have our community of staff that's here, and all of us, I mean, these are our kids, right? None of us have actual children. We've got 79 babies to take care of throughout the day. It's really funny. Pretty much everyone here will reference them as kids. But as far as like what these animals are, I tell people all the time they're basically like having a toddler, like a 3-year-old, and a shark hybridized into one being. So, I mean, sort of like a child.
Yeah, right. So, what is kind of like the daily routine that you guys go through to kind of maintain all of these animals?
Yeah, so what we do, we start in the morning, bright and early at 7:30. We do a team debrief where we talk about anything that came up the day before that our team needs to know, our priorities for the day, and kind of what everybody's going to be working on based on those priorities. From there, we have one person who starts rounds, which is they'll prep medications into basically, we call them med balls. So it's ground beef with medications in there. Most of the animals Love that. Don't question the pills.
Hmm.
And then while that person does that, they walk around and make sure they can get eyes on every single one of our animals to make sure they're alive and well. We'll check the water, make sure they have a good appropriate amount of water, because if we fill their water at the end of the night and then we wake up in the morning and the bucket is completely empty, then that keys us in that there might be excessive thirst, which could lead potentially indicate health issues or something going on. So that's something we take note of. We make sure all of the locks were properly locked the day before, and see if there's any sort of obstruction on fencing. Because we get a lot of high winds and harsh weather out here, and the juniper and the pinyon trees can be a little flimsy. So we just make sure that all of our fences are nice and safe. There's nothing weird in the enclosures. So then rounds are done. 4 out of 7 days of the week, we do feeding for our animals. And the reason why we do that is to replicate a feast and famine cycle like they would have in the wild. Um, and we go through a ton, and a literal ton of meat each week, plus, a ton plus. And we'll load up our ATV with all of our different food. We make them into loaves, like frozen meat loaves, and we change the weight based on how the animals are looking. So if they're looking chunky, they'll get a diet loaf. If they are looking skinny, they'll go up to a booster. We've even got a couple of kids that got chunky enough that they needed to go on a coyote diet because coyotes eat less than wolves. But so we manage their body scores to make sure they are nice and healthy there. And then after feeding, we'll do animal care, which is going in, scrubbing out their buckets, cleaning the poop, the non-glamorous work. But it's also when we get to hang out with them, do some socialization, operant conditioning, give out enrichment. And then around 11:30, we start rotating our lunches. The rounds person will then do a midday rounds to make sure the animals are okay midday, give out our midday meds. And then we'll start doing things like wolf kitchen, which is preparing all the food, making our loaves, sepping meat, which is basically separating, okay, we can use this. This is gross. We have to throw that out because we are donation based. So, not everything we get is appropriate to feed out. Then once we have things separated, we will throw it in a meat grinder, get everything grinded, and then we make them into the loaves. And I know this sounds really simple, but when you go through a ton of meat each week, it's a lot. We spend a lot of time in Wolf Kitchen, and we affectionately call it the meat mines because it is just that much work. But that's the typical routine. And then we've got people like me who have to do a lot of admin and office work because I do all the marketing and the grants and fundraising, which is really the boring work when you work with animals and at the sanctuary. But that's pretty much it for the most part. Each day is different as far as what projects we have. But it's a lot of Wolf Kitchen. And I guess I forgot. We'll also do guard duty rounds, which is end of day, making sure everyone has water for the night, everything's locked, all of that good stuff.
I can't even fathom how much a ton of meat looks like, and I'm just picturing just a mile, a mound of meat, and I couldn't even figure or factor in how much a ton of it is. So that's got to be pretty amazing.
It's a lot. So we don't have them in just like a mountain, but we do have
No,
like.
I'm just saying, like, just visually thinking, like, what is a? I mean, you go through this a week. I mean, that's
Mhm.
not a month or a year. That's like every single week, a ton of meat, and not
Yeah.
literally like a literal ton of meat.
Yeah, we fill up our meat. Basically, when we get it donated, we have big brute trash cans that are full of things like it could be grocery store donations, it could be whole prey or pieces of elk from a butcher. But there are times where we'll have like 12 trash cans full of meat that we have to separate. And that's not even all of the meat that they're going to eat. We separate the unusable stuff. So we probably go through over 2 tons of meat a week, just even, choosing which meat we can use and what needs
Just
to be
separate out
tossed.
1 ton. Yeah.
Hmm.
So let's talk about like the donations that you guys receive. What's your main kind of like fundraising avenue? You talked about like raising money and grants, and then stores donating meat. Like, what does the fundraising kind of look like for you on a yearly basis? Like, what are some of the main events that you do? What have you found that's been successful? What are some that you tried and failed at? Like, what's some advice for some other nonprofits that are kind of looking to for what works, what doesn't work, and kind of learn from other people's failures and successes.
Yeah, so we pretty much rely exclusively on donations from people. We get a couple of grants each year, but grants are really competitive, so you can't like say this is how I'm going to bring in all of my money. I've been with the organization for 2 years, and prior to that, there wasn't anyone here who had like a marketing background or anything like that. So the fundraising wasn't as I'm actually going to pause for a
Sure.
second. It's okay. Um, sorry, I've got to like circle back to where I was in my head. So I started here and brought in a lot of my marketing knowledge because I had a history in Fortune 300s, tech startups, all of those like boring comparatively jobs, but that taught me a lot. And I was able to start bringing in more strategic fundraising efforts. So, one of the things that we do is we do a monthly newsletter to our audience. We chose to do monthly because we didn't want to fatigue people. And we won't even always ask for a specific donation in that newsletter. We use it as an opportunity to inform our donors what's going on at the sanctuary, any big news, and then we'll have a light call to action. If we have anything that we really need, like microlactin, which is a supplement all of our seniors are on, or dog igloos for new rescues, we'll do a call out in the newsletter. And then in December, we do, 4, 5, 6 emails for the giving season to promote all of that. And throughout the year, we'll do a bunch of different things. We do 5 live streams a year where we administer enrichment items to our animals. So next week, we have a present toss, and donors are able to sponsor enrichment or presents for the animals. And then from there, we will do a live stream going around our compound and tossing presents over the fence and,
Mhm.
filming them and talking about them while they're destroying the stuff and finding all the toys and the snacks. So that's a really great way for us to bring in money for the animals. We also post consistently on social media. We post at least once a day to keep that engagement up. This last year, we did an online auction that was super helpful for us. We were able to bring in, oh, I'm going to make a liar out of myself, but it was somewhere between 15 and $17,000 with like a week-long online auction with a bunch of stuff that we just had at the sanctuary, taking up space that we weren't using. So that was really, really great for us. And then we've just recently started digging into advertising on social media, and I'm really excited because I was able to hook up tracking analytics to the link that I was doing on advertising. And in the last 2 days, we've so far spent a very small amount, $40, but we've received $80 in donations.
Oh
So
wow.
already you can see the ROI on that is doing pretty well. Anyone that wants to do advertising of any sort for their nonprofit, I highly, highly recommend getting tracking information. So if it's digital, do a tracking link. If you can get a tracking phone number for something like a billboard, that's really amazing. Basically, anything you can do to attribute that advertising effort to your donations. That way you can see where is it making sense for us to spend money, what's not working. I also highly recommend when you have visitors, if you're open to the public, asking them how they heard about you. just a few days ago, I led a twilight tour for a couple and I asked them how they heard about us. And they said that they, saw us in one journal, then saw us in a newspaper. And they were like, we saw you guys, so we decided to come out. And, for me as a marketer, I was like, that is the most amazing
Mhm.
thing you could have
Yeah,
ever said to me because a lot of like publications, you never know if people are going to see them or
yeah.
not. And so also being engaged with the local community as much as you can. We've started building partnerships with local New Mexico businesses and, connecting with the journalists that write about nonprofits, business, animals, and kind of all of that good stuff. But we're constantly trying to find new ways to bring in money, engage with our donors, and all of that. And even stuff that we don't think went well, we'll usually, take a minute to analyze, why do we think this didn't work? Is it worth trying again by remedying those things that we thought went wrong? Or was it just not a good fit?
Hmm. And when you've been there for 2 years, do you happen to know what the like email list was and your social media followers were when you started and kind of what they are today? Like the
Yeah.
growth on it?
So when I first started, we had maybe 6,500 people on our email list, and then now we are at almost 9,000. I haven't looked at the numbers in the last week or two. We were at, I believe it was 75,000 followers on Instagram, and we are super close to 90 right now.
Nice.
And then Facebook, we've gone up a lot. We have like 690-ish thousand on Facebook. And that's gone up a lot, but Facebook doesn't give historical data of followers outside of, we've been around for a super long time. So I'm not able to compare, rates and how everything went up, but we've definitely been on the up and up since I've taken everything over.
And what do you think contributes to that? You think just being consistent and kind of, just kind of posting regularly is kind of the main benefactor?
Absolutely. So, posting regularly helps the algorithm know that you are a credible source.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so posting regularly is super important for us. One, because it's part of our mission. We use social media to do a lot of education to our donors. And we also create that love and consistency from our donors on social media, or even people that haven't donated yet. Building that story, that consistency, that brand, connecting people with our animals, their stories, giving them personality that helps really build that love and affection for the brand. Same thing with the email list. Um, and then with the email, because so many of those people are over the age of 65 and not on social media, they don't hear from us unless they get an email. So being able to tell them what we've worked on in the last month. Have we taken in any more animals? Have we built more enclosures? How many animals got vetted? That's a way to keep them abreast and know that they are supporting an organization that's worthwhile. We are fully transparent with our donors and we want them to know as much about us as possible because we believe that's what helps them relate to us and want to give.
Uh, with the giving and the posting, do you feel that educational piece is kind of what helps to bring people in and click the follow button or sign up to the email list? Or do you feel it's just like photos and information about each of the animals? Like, what do you think for a nonprofit, like they should be focusing their content on that they're kind of creating and publishing out there?
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, so it really is a good mix of both. We did an analysis on our social media over the summer, and we actually found out that while educational posts typically don't get as many likes, they get more shares, more comments because people don't know that. But in the animal field, people want to see the animals. They think they're beautiful. They really, really love hearing about their personalities. So, each year, we'll feature our animals for their rescue anniversary and their birthday, and we'll refresh people on their stories, how they got here, how they're doing. And that really, really helps out because it is like telling that story and driving that connection. And then education, like I said, that's part of our mission. We don't just want to post photos of the animals because that's not helping anyone. It is serving the love, the affection, the desire to see them, but there's a lot of misconception, a lot of myths, a lot of bad information about these guys out there. So it's really important for us to put that information out. And then we also don't do educational posts every day because then that's boring. So we like to do a good mix. We'll do, those announcements, we'll do education, and we do some fluff too. People also love seeing us as caretakers in with the animals. That's a thing that gets a lot of engagement because they live vicariously through us and through what they see. Because, most people can't drop everything to move out to the middle of nowhere, make no money, and take care of the animals. So, our focus is really just building that trust and faith in us as an organization and using our platform to do the most good that we can.
That's great. So, where, if people want to find out more information and donate and, sign up for a mailing list or your social medias, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you so they can kind of get into your world?
Yeah, and before I even give any information, I will highlight that I know that this year has been extremely challenging for a lot of nonprofits due to the current economic state, and that is definitely true for us too. So any sort of support, whether it is sharing on social media, donating, or even giving us connections for people that may want to be interested or help out, goes a long, long way. So we would be appreciative for anything. But you can find us at wildspiritwolfsanctuary.org. If you're looking for something shorter, you can type in seethewolves.com. That'll take you to the same place. And we're Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary on all social media. We're most active on Facebook and Instagram. We'll occasionally post on TikTok, and we do also have a LinkedIn for anyone that's interested in the businessy stuff. So yeah, you can find us there, and if you want to get in touch with us, you can go to our website and fill out the contact form, or you can reach out to me directly, and I can traffic the email anywhere it needs to go. And my email is katie@wildspiritwolfsanctuary.org, and Katie as Katie.
Perfect, Katie. Well, we'll make sure to include all of the links also in the bios for this podcast. And thank you so much for being here. This is so great to kind of hear about all of the animals, and would love to kind of add some videos of maybe you walking around and showing us some of the animals. We'll include that in our YouTube video, so people listening to us on Spotify can find more information and some behind the scenes attached to the back end of this on YouTube. But that'll be great. But I definitely appreciate your time and kind of learning more about the organization and what you do for these animals. So thanks so much for taking the time.